Hello, welcome back to another video. So today's video, I'm going to run you through my current full week of workouts. It has been a hot minute since I've done one of these videos. I think the last one was like right at the start of this year, and that's something I just want to touch on really quickly. In terms of how often I change up my program, I feel like it's important to set some context. Not that often. It's very common for people to change up their program every 8 to 12 weeks, and generally there's nothing wrong with that, but also something that I feel like never gets mentioned is you don't absolutely have to change it up either. It can be good to change things up, first of all, from a motivation point of view, having something new and fresh and fun, it's exciting. But second of all, you know, if you've got growth goals, maybe you want to have an 8-week block where you really focus on glutes, or an 8-week block where you really focus on quads, because trying to really focus on everything at the same time can sometimes be quite difficult. So that's another reason why you might run these 8 to 12 week blocks. Periodization is also something else that you might want to consider, especially if you are further along into your training journey. That's something that you might want to consider as well, which might mean changing up your workouts every 8 to 12 weeks. But I would argue you can still periodize sessions without changing up movements. You might just look at switching up how many reps in reserve are you leaving, how hard are you training, your rep ranges. You might run a strength block but keep the sort of movements the same, tapering volume up and down, those sorts of things. But generally speaking, honestly guys, my training stays very consistent for quite large chunks of time, and that's just because I'm not someone who gets bored particularly easily when it comes to training, which is why I will run my programs for a little bit longer. I have been doing this program for about 6 weeks now, and I love this program. It's probably one of my favorite programs. By the way, this video obviously is completely free of charge for you guys, but the program and everything will be linked down below. I've put it in a Google Drive with a big old disclaimer document, so please read that first. This is not a beginner program. This is actually quite an advanced program. And yeah, I hope that you enjoy watching this video. So first of all, I'm just going to show you guys, and I will pop on the screen my current program. So I am currently trying to train 5 times a week. All of the clips in this video were filmed on the first time of me doing each workout. Reason being is I don't like to just show you guys the absolute perfect final finished version of something. I mean, this program is in itself the perfect final, you know, pristine version of something, but the exercises, I know that a lot of you found my last video useful, where I was actually picking up on things that maybe needed to be tweaked with my form, and right at the beginning of a block is when I film my sessions more so that I can see anything I need to tweak, things I can pick up on. And I think it's really helpful to show you guys that as well, so that you know, if you're not absolutely perfect on a movement, or maybe there's something that you notice I'm doing that I would also tweak, and then, you know, maybe if a movement's not felt quite right for you, you might try out that tweakment. And also it's just good to know that someone that's been in the gym for literally years, I'm 24 now, I would say I started seriously training in like late teens. I still get shit wrong. When I've not done a movement in a while, it can look a little rusty. It might not be perfect. So I think it's good for you guys to see that, so that you don't feel, you know, intimidated or like everything has to be perfect all the time, because it doesn't, and it won't be. So I have got, as you can see, a 5-day split at the moment. I'm hitting lower body 3 times a week. This is something I get asked so much now, thanks to TikTok, I believe. Is training lower body 3 times a week? How long is a piece of string? Is sort of the response to that. It really depends. One of the most important things, frequency does matter, yes, and recovery between sessions does matter, yes, but you also need to consider your volume. You could split your leg day volume, you know, for glutes, hamstrings, quads, calves and everything over 2 days if you wanted to, or you could split it over 3 days. For me personally, so that I can personally make sure that for me, I'm hitting my quads enough, I'm hitting my hamstrings enough, I'm hitting my glutes enough, and shock horror, hitting my calves like a little bit. I'm not gonna say enough because I don't think it's enough still, but a little bit. 3 days a week works really well for me. I prefer doing legs 3 days a week. I will have blocks periodically sometimes where I do legs 2 times a week, but I really do like hitting legs 3 times a week. So that's why I train legs 3 times a week. Everyone's different. You might not be able to recover from 3 leg days a week. That is also completely fine. And in terms of the split, I have a full lower, a glutes and hamstrings, and a glutes and quads session. In terms of my upper body training, you'll see I've got 2 upper body sessions. And in terms of me personally with my upper body, and oh my God, this is so controversial to say, and I really wish it wasn't, I don't like training upper body too much for growth, okay? I don't like doing it purely because genetically I can pack on muscle so much quicker on my upper body than my lower body. It feels like if I sniff a weight, I will build muscle quickly. And I'm not saying that to scare women from training upper body. I'm just saying there are women out there who are genetically predispositioned to build muscle a lot quicker on their upper body than their lower body. Now that's not a problem if that's the sort of physique that you like, the bigger upper body, the slightly smaller in comparison lower body. For me personally, that's not the look I'm going for, and so I taper back my upper body training for this reason, because I want to be in proportion, and I don't want like a much bigger upper body compared to my lower body. But for me, if I train upper body seriously enough, you know, I would take years to catch up with my lower body. So that's why I train the way I do. You do not have to train like this. Another thing worth mentioning is I've got implants. I've got the fake tig old biddies. So I don't hit chest because my implants are under the muscle. Some people can. Personally, I cannot. It's very uncomfortable for me. It's just not comfortable for me, and it's not something I've ever done since I got my implants, so that is why there is no chest work in here. Feel free to add some. It's not like an aesthetic decision, it's purely like a functional thing. I really can't train chest without quite a lot of discomfort, so that's why there's no chest work in this program. In terms of my upper body, I like to focus a lot more on back. There's a little bit of shoulders and a little bit of arms in here, but back is something I'm really trying to work on a little bit more at the moment. Not, you know, anything crazy, but the main focuses of this program is glutes, quads and hamstrings, yes, but I wanted to put glutes at the forefront again, which sounds ironic because I feel like everyone thinks I just hit glutes, but it's actually not true. And with my last program, I actually took a bit of an emphasis off them. There wasn't like that, it was more of an overall lower, whereas this one I have put a bit more of an emphasis back on glutes again, but also quads and hamstrings, in particularly quads, but also hamstrings, to be honest. I'm trying to grow my calves a little bit, and another thing I'm trying to work on is making sure I'm keeping up with like my core and ab strength and keeping that nice and strong. That's something I've neglected for a long time, and I'm no longer neglecting it. I'm working it into my weekly routines, and I have actually noticed a massive difference with my strength on my compound lifts, and I feel like I get way less lower back pain on things like RDLs now since I've started including a bit more core work. Another addition is cardio. I am doing cardio, but yeah, that is the sort of overall view of the program, and now we are just going to get into the clips. But yeah, let's get into the program. So first thing I just want to go over before I get into my full lower body day, so this is the Monday session on my program. The main thing I want to go over with this is the knee sleeves. I just want to touch on it really quickly. I never used to use knee sleeves, but ever since I started doing, my old coach had me doing hack squat and leg press in one day, and I have got what I can only describe as gammy knees, and my knees were getting seriously like beat up from doing that. Alpha Elite dropped knee sleeves, and that was my first time trying them, so ever since then, I have not gone a squat pattern day without knee sleeves because my strength like went up quite significantly, and I don't get the pain in my knee anymore. They basically help keep your knees nice and warm, and if you do have gammy knees, I would really recommend. However, the knee sleeves I have on in this clip, I just want to point it out because I know that someone else is going to point it out. They didn't quite fit me. I wanted like a cute all pink moment, but these knee sleeves didn't quite fit me right. They needed to be a little bit tighter around my actual knee. I found these ones were tight below and tight above my knee, like around the seam, but around my actual knee you can see there's a lot of sort of excess fabric. So I'm gonna scooch to the side and let's just get into the form and the full program. This is my full lower body day, and I'm doing the pendulum squat. In my program, you will notice I've got hack squat or pendulum squat. The pendulum squat has been more readily available. I know you can literally see that the hack squat's available in the background. To be honest, this day I just really couldn't be arsed, so I did the pendulum squat. But for an update, I have been keeping up with doing the pendulum squat. I had hack squat in my last program with my coach, and I just thought, I want to take a little bit of a break from that. So yes, no hack squat in this workout. I've gone for the pendulum squat. People make you feel like you're not training properly if you're not using free weights. Using a machine, if your main goal is growth, can actually be a lot more helpful because it gives you a lot more stability in the movement. You can progressively overload more, and it can be a lot more useful for growth. So never let anyone shit on you for your choices to do a machine over a free weight. You're not inferior. I'm doing a pendulum squat. I just wanted to note on the sort of setup, this is how I like to stand. To be honest, since doing this and since filming this clip, I have actually shuffled my feet a little bit further down the platform. Reason being is, and I'm going to show you sort of the knee angle, reason being is I can push my knees further over my toes when my feet are a little bit further down. Oh, that's a WhatsApp notification. When my feet are a little bit further down on this platform, I find it easier to do that. So yeah, that's just a little tweakment that I've already made. If you have a pendulum squat but you're scared to use it, as you can see, there's this sort of handle right directly in front of my body below my elbow. You can see that handle. Essentially what you're going to do is you're going to push that handle forwards or backwards. Every machine is different. In my gym, I believe it's forward, so you sort of lift the weight up a little with your shoulders, push it forwards, and then it's unracked. And then when you need to re-rack it, you're going to pull it back and make sure that the plates are resting. Well, not the exact plates, but the machine part with the plates on is resting on that bit. And then you are good to go and you'll be safe to get out. So the main thing that I have been really working on, and to be fair, I did a really good job even on week 1 of my program, is the momentum I'm doing these with. I am slowing these right down, because a massive mistake, in my opinion, that I always see with pendulum squats or hack squats is using the bounce in the bottom of the movement and coming down super quick and bouncing almost off your calves to come back up. Means you're sort of using more momentum rather than using, your quads and your glutes to press back up. So as you'll see, I'm going incredibly slowly, and I'm also going slowly because, guys, your girl's training hard. Like, if your reps are not slowing down, you are not training hard enough. And Dan actually had to help me here. So this was week 1, and I think I've got 70 kg on there. Yeah, if you are ever curious as to whether you're training hard enough, film your sets. And if every single rep looks the same speed in particular, to be honest, you are not pushing hard enough, and you probably have a lot more reps in you. So as you can see, that last rep was a lot slower, and Dan actually had to help me. So I filmed this angle so you can sort of see the positioning of my knees and ankles and stuff. However, as you can see, my knees are moving a little bit forwards, but it's nothing crazy. So I would actually like to shuffle my feet back a little bit, just so my knee is going a little bit further forward, to get a better stretch on my quads and pull a little bit more quads into these. At the moment, obviously, I am hitting my quads. You can literally see that my quads are working, but that will sort of improve how much I'm hitting my quads, and that's a little tweakment that I have made to this movement. Next up, we have got the leg press. So with this being a full lower day for my foot placement, I'm actually doing feet sort of narrow and in the middle of the platform. The further down on the platform you go, the more quads you're going to hit, and the further up on the platform you go, the more glutes you're going to hit. So I've gone for a sort of middle road here to hit both, and I've been really enjoying doing these. So the main thing I always say with the leg press, and you guys will be so sick of hearing me speak about this now, but you can literally see the veins in my hands popping because I am really using those handles to pull me into the bottom of the seat. If you are someone who always finds that when it comes to your leg press you are getting backache from it, there is a high likelihood that when you are bringing your knees towards your chest, your lower back is peeling away from the seat. And a little insurance policy that you can do to try and prevent this from happening is to really use the handles. The handles are there for a reason, and I always find the more that my clients, or when I used to do it, put the hands on the heads, which you can do it if you can keep your lower back planted firmly in the chair, but a lot of people can, and that's where they get the lower back issues, because if you get that lower back peeling, you're not just pushing through your quads and your glutes, you are also pushing through your lower back, which is going to put stress on your lower back. So that's something to be cautious of, but using those handles will help a lot. So moving on, we've got lion hamstring curls. Definitely should have taken my knee sleeves off for this, by the way, because as you are going to see, it does impact my form, because these were so tight and uncomfortable. I felt like I couldn't properly bend my knees. It sounds really weird, but I just felt like the movement was very uncomfortable with these knee sleeves on. So I definitely should have taken these off for this, just because they were so stiff. With my Alpha Elite ones, I can keep them on throughout the workout, but with this one, absolutely not, no way. So in terms of the setup, you're going to want the pad to be about sort of mid-calf, maybe a little bit lower down. So there's usually two adjustments. You've got the pad itself, and then behind my sort of hamstring here, you can also adjust the pad sort of height and where the pad actually sits, whereas this little adjustment at the bottom here will determine where it sits sort of on your leg and like lower down or higher up. So when you are getting into a lion hamstring curl, the main thing that I want you to focus on, and admittedly I'm not perfect here, it's not awful, but it's not perfect, really driving your hips down into the pad. You know, if you are getting a massive gap when you are doing these between the pad and your hip bones, that is because you are actually using a lot more momentum and using your hamstrings less. So you can see I'm actually doing that quite severely here, not severely, but a little bit more. So trying to make sure that you are really driving your hips down into the pad to make sure that you are using your hamstrings and not just using momentum. And again, watching those reps slow down. I didn't quite get the full rep on that end one. Moving on, we've got leg extensions. So in terms of the setup for these, I get asked about this a lot. You want to adjust the seat so that your knees are in line with the bolts on the side here, where you can see there's two bolts next to my knee. You want your knees to be in line with those bolts. That's how you want to adjust the seat. And then in terms of the pad, you want it to be sort of above the ankle. I would actually have mine maybe one higher up, and then it's a very, very simple movement. I like to use the handles to keep me sort of secure in the seat and keep me sort of pulled down to make sure, again, I'm not swinging, I'm not using any momentum. And the key here is to not just fling your quads up. Really imagine as you are bringing that weight up that you are squeezing your quad to bring the weight up. Sounds so simple, but I used to really struggle with leg extensions, and now I absolutely love them. And I feel like it's because I feel them a lot more, because I'm a lot more intentional with the movement. I don't just fling the weight up, I'm a lot more intentional with it. And also, if you are someone who always complains that your quads never grow but your glutes are growing, that was literally me for years. Pay attention to how much effort, look, like you can literally see, pay attention to how much effort you are putting into your leg extensions and your quad biasing movements as opposed to your hip thrusts. If you are not going as hard on leg extensions as you are your hip thrusts, reassess, because also leg extensions are a little bit easier to go harder on. The lactic acid buildup is awful, but they're very similar movements in the sense that you are trying to shorten the muscle. You know, you're not trying to stretch it like you are in a squat. So the same way you get that sort of lactic acid buildup in any movement, but the sort of sensation with hip thrusts, it's very similar with leg extensions, but for your quads. Make sure you are putting that same energy that you put into your glute days, which is hunky-dory, as Kathy Hilton would love to say. Make sure you are putting that same energy into your quad workouts, because being honest, I just wasn't, and I was like, my quads won't grow, my quads won't grow. And I've also started just prioritizing quad work a little bit more. For example, now I do leg extensions 2 times a week, not just one. You know, if you're trying to grow your glutes, you might want to be hip thrusting. Some people hip thrust 3 times a week, but they might never consider doing leg extensions more than once a week. So a little bit of food for thought. Moving on, we've got the Thought calf machine. I just love this calf machine way more than any seated one I've ever used. You're sort of like standing but bent over. I don't know, I just really like this movement, and I feel my calves a lot more. You can literally see my calves are like popping off. So with any calf raise movement, you want to make sure that you're not just stopping when your foot is parallel with the floor. You are bringing your heels down a little bit further to get a really good stretch on your calves, and then again, little little pressure through your, like the balls of your feet and your toes to push back up. But yeah, that stretch at the bottom is key when it comes to calf raises. If you are just stopping when your feet are like parallel to the ground, you're not really getting the full range of motion for your calves. So making sure you're getting a good stretch at the bottom portion and then pressing back up, of course, using your calf. So moving on, we've got the first upper body day of the week. This is a full upper body day and a little bit of core work as well. By the way, with this program, you will notice, and it's just because like if machines and stuff are in use, the program might be a little bit different to how it is on paper, but that's just because things are in use and I've had to swap days around. So not swap days around, swap movements around certain days. That's all it is. It's not that I've changed the program because it works better. It's just, that's the way the cookie crumbles sometimes, guys. That is just the way the cookie crumbles. First of all, in this upper body day, we have got bent over rows. So I'm showing you with the bar only. You want to grab the bar, underhand grip, because we are doing supinated barbell bent over rows here. You want to hinge your hips back just like you would in an RDL. You want to keep that neck in line like I am here. Where I've put my head down here, this is much better. You don't want to be like this, trying to look up, just like you wouldn't with RDLs. You don't want to do it with a bent over row either. You want your back to be nice and neutral, and that doesn't mean completely flat, because not everyone has a completely flat back. It just means neutral, the sort of shape of your natural spine. So not like massively trying to put an arch in your lower back and pop your booty out, but also not trying to contort yourself into a position that just feels very unnatural. And in terms of the rowing motion, you want to make sure that you're pulling up and in towards your belly button. I know that some people like to, I think it's JPG, he really likes to like reach the bar out and bring it back in like this. That's something I'm actually going to try this week to see if I prefer it, but I honestly like just keeping in one sort of bar path with these. It doesn't bother me and I still feel this movement really, really well, but that is something that's worth noting and something that I want to try. So that was just with the bar, so you can sort of see the form, and then I put some weight on. So as you can see, it's not a ton of weight. I think I only went with like, I want to say 35 kilos, but again, hinging those hips right back, getting myself in position, and then staying as stable as possible. You do not want to be using momentum to get the bar up, which I do on the final rep, and I'm going to show you exactly what not to do, but all these reps are good other than this one. No, not that one, it's the next one. This one here, you can see there, I've like come up and tried to use momentum to row the bar. In my book, that rep doesn't count because I've really shrugged the weight up and used momentum. So I'm not really going to be utilizing the muscles I'm trying to work in this movement the best. Yeah, you can move more weight if you're doing it like that, but this is a key thing with training. Just because you are moving more weight, it doesn't inherently mean better. I would argue you are much better going with a lighter weight and practicing the right form until you are ready to go up in weight. Now that doesn't mean like absolutely penalise yourself and never add weight, because if you add a little bit of weight, your form is thrown off slightly, but this is sort of like a very much breakdown of the form and it's very uncontrolled. You don't want to be doing that. The other reps, yes. This final rep, no, I wouldn't personally count that rep. It's more of like a shrug, and you can see I'm like, nope, that didn't work. Moving on, we have actually got a seated row, and this is a wide grip seated row. I love this machine in my gym. It's fairly new, so I'm just adjusting it so that I'm sitting sort of closer to the machine so that I can bring my elbows further back behind me, because that's how I like to do this. Some people like to stop with their elbows in line. I like to bring it a little bit further back. I love this row machine. I'm not sure like the brand on it. I'll check in the gym today and maybe I'll leave it in a pinned comment, but oh my god, love, 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 love this row. So this was my first set, so I wasn't going super heavy. It was more of a sort of, not a warm-up set, but just sort of easing into the movement because I hadn't trained upper body in a hot minute. But again, with back movements, unless you have scoliosis, no, not scoliosis, wrong back condition, unless you have hyperlordosis, there is no reason for you to be like severely arching your back on back machines other than to make your glutes look more flattering. But it's not needed. I feel like people think it's needed because that's what you see on social media. It's not necessary. I don't think it's completely detrimental either. I'm not going to be like, you're going to absolutely kill your back doing that. I think over time you might strain your back doing that, but you know, it's not the end of the world, but just something that you don't have to do. And it's something that I try not to do now because I did it for so many years and it just looks, to be honest, it looks awkward when I do it. But yeah, obviously if you've got hyperlordosis, you're not going to be able to help that. But yeah, so just rowing the movement. Obviously this is a wide grip. So with a lot of rowing movements, you will often hear me and other people say to sort of keep those elbows squeezed in, like I would with the bent over row, wanting to keep the elbows sort of squeezed into your side. With a wide grip, obviously your elbows are going to be flared out a little bit more. It's going to be targeting your muscles slightly differently. But again, keeping it like all under control, getting a good stretch, which this machine is so good for because I feel like you can really reach forward and then pulling back and getting a nice little contraction at the top. But yeah, I've been really enjoying doing this movement. Moving on, I love doing these, and I already know that people are going to be like, you can't pull your elbows behind you, it's not optimal. This is a movement where I don't care if it's not optimal. It feels so good. I enjoy doing it, and it's probably the movement I look forward to doing most on my back days because it just feels so good when I do it. I love doing it, and therefore I'm going to keep doing it. So I'm sat on a mat, by the way, because one, the floor was wet from being clean, but two, these Amplify are hella soft, and if I sit on the flooring they will like bobble on the bum, so that's not needed. But I do like to sit on a mat. In terms of setting up the cable, it'll depend on your height, but you want it to be so that you can fully stretch up. So you wouldn't want it like in eye line with you when you're sitting down because you want it to be a sort of overhead pulling down. Getting into the movement, full nice stretch at the top and then bringing that weight back down. And with this one, I'm not trying to bring my elbows far behind me, again, as the optimal bros will point out, because of the attachment I can't anyway. But I just find I feel my lats so much on this movement. I love doing this movement so much. I prefer it to other pull down variations. I just really like doing this movement. So yeah, even if it's not optimal, and not everything has to be optimal, you need a good mix of, yes, movements that work, but also movements you enjoy. And no one can tell me this isn't working my back at all. It is. Might not be optimal, but we're working it. I love this movement. Definitely one I'd probably recommend trying out the most. Moving on, we have got some lateral raises. So these lateral raises, I like doing them chest supported because my traps, boy, they will take over. I look at a dumbbell, my traps grow, they just take over. And I've found since switching, doing any sort of lateral raise movements, the chest supported, my traps take over a lot less. I'm super stable in the movement. I'm not shrugging the weight at all. The only thing I'd change here is my gym's got new benches, so now my face is like this in the pad. I'd probably just try it standing up, but I also like sitting down because I feel like you really cannot shrug the weight at all. You have to do things sort of with control and really using your delts. In terms of the general form, I like to do these with a slight bend in the elbows. I don't do them straight out to the side. It's sort of like, actually, to be fair, it is pretty much straight out to the side with here, but because my elbows are bent a little, they're a little bit in front of me. And you want to be imagining you are sort of pushing the corners of the room away. And again, doing these chest supported, and even just sitting down if you don't want to do chest support, takes any sort of like bouncing through the rest of your body out of the movement, and make sure you are really using your delts and not relying on momentum or other movements. Moving on, we have got hammer curls for biceps. I absolutely love doing these. I like including a movement where my palms are facing each other for biceps, and also one where my palms are more like this. So this is my palms facing each other movement. I do them one at a time just because I find I shrug way less when I'm doing this. I find it easier to control the weight. Keeping my elbow as still as possible, making sure I'm fully pulling up with my bicep. And again, I like to do these seated because when you're doing things like this seated, you cannot shrug the weight up. You can't press through the rest of your body. That's why I like to do hammer curls seated, or any bicep work with dumbbells and free weights. I just like doing it seated. It takes all the shrugging out of it. And again, you can see the reps starting to slow down, clearly struggling, and you know, training with a good intensity, but also trying to keep my form as clean as possible and not shrugging the weights up or like flailing my elbows absolutely everywhere. Moving on to some core work. I'm showing you here what not to do. So I don't know if you can really tell because it's quite dark, and to be honest, I should have checked the viewfinder. Why am I halfway down the screen? But I'm not focusing on tucking my sort of pelvis in and like back sucking to the floor. I'm not focusing on doing that, which means there's a big curve in my back, and I'm probably going to end up recruiting a lot more of my hip flexors as opposed to using my core, because my core is not in the right position to be used properly. So that's what I'm trying to show you here, and then here I'm showing you how I would adjust that. So you can see it's not as flattering. My stomach looks a bit more boxy, if you will. I don't think it looks bad, but yeah, it's less flattering than the sort of like, ooh, look at this nice curve I've got in my lower back. It's not good to be doing your core workouts like that. So really sucking my lower back into the floor, and then bringing my legs up and down. Also with leg raises, it's really important to know if coming absolutely all the way down means that your lower back peels off the floor, it's okay to not come all the way down. You can just use a range of motion that works for you, lowering your legs until you start to feel your lower back sort of peeling off the floor and then coming back up. Then my second movement that I'm doing here is my single leg sort of, not leg raises. I don't know what to call these, but I really like doing them. So the same form tips apply, keeping your lower back sort of sucked to the floor, and then you're gonna keep your legs up like this, and you're just gonna one down, of one down, one down, of one down. And this is my little core routine. On my program, I did have something else in my core routine, but I wasn't enjoying doing it, so I took it out. So yeah, this is my little core routine. It's just 2 movements, super quick, super simple, super easy. And the main thing with your core is just keeping it nice and tight. And if you are doing any sort of leg raises and all that sort of stuff, making sure you're not putting an excessive bend through your lower back, trying to keep your lower back sucked to the floor as much as you possibly can. Moving on, we have got my glutes and hamstring sessions. So first of all, we've got B-stance hip thrusts. These are a partially unilateral movement, not completely, because you are still using your other leg in the movement to stabilize you. So in terms of the setup, the bench you are using will depend on your sort of height. I like my benches for my hip thrusts or my bridges, any sort of movement like that. I like the bench to hit sort of where the bottom of my sports bra would hit. That's how I like to set things up. I'm sitting on a mat. Again, that is not for a form issue. It's so that my Amplify leggings, well, shorts in this case, don't peel. You can do these on a machine also. My gym does have a machine. I just don't like it. It doesn't feel like they're ever really built for my build. I don't feel my glutes on it as much. It just doesn't feel as comfortable, which honestly sucks because setting the hip thrust up is a fucking ball ache. I absolutely hate doing it, but this feels a lot better for me, and I've always preferred doing them with a barbell. There's one glute drive I tried at Alpha Land, which I did actually like, but my gym doesn't have that one, so I like to use a barbell. And then in terms of foot placement for B-stance, you want to make sure that you are still hitting that 90-degree angle at the top with your working leg, and with your non-working leg, which is also still working to stabilize you in the movement, hence why it's not a completely unilateral movement. You want the heel of that foot to be in line with the toes of your working foot, if that makes sense. So that's sort of how I'm setting things up here. And then you want the pad to be directly sort of over your pelvis, over your glute. We are going through the movements. As you can see, I've got that nice 90-degree angle with my shin at the top, and my foot position in here, I'm honestly pretty happy with. Yeah, I'm locking out properly at the top. You can see I'm not sort of dipped down. A thing I see all the time with hip thrust, B-stance hip thrust, cas glute bridges is people just not locking out at the top. You can see that their sort of pelvis is still sort of like this at the top. You are trying to work your glutes through hip extension. You need to be fully extending your hips to fully shorten your glutes at the top of the movement. If you are not locking out properly, you will still be working your glutes, but you're not going to be working them to the extent that you could be. So that's something that I would encourage you to really focus on, making sure that you are properly locking out at the top. And if you are unsure, including 1-second pauses at the top of your hip thrust, bridges, B stance hip thrust reps can really help reinforce this idea of fully locking out at the top. Another thing also is to not rush through your reps or like, you know, speed through them. I would maybe slow some of these down a slight bit, but honestly, these aren't too rushed. Another thing to know, and this is why I've included this rest clip, is when you are doing single leg work, you can rest between your legs. It's okay to do that. I rest between legs on all my single leg work now, so yeah. I'm just having a quick rest, about 30 seconds to a minute, and then going into my other leg. And again, I'm still really happy with the form on this leg, keeping everything nice and tight. Yeah, you can see that I'm also really pushing myself. The reps are starting to slow down, struggling to lock out fully at the top on this rep. And then I attempted this one and I was like, nope, not gonna get it. Moving on, we are doing stiff leg deadlifts. So I've actually included a side by side of an RDL on the left hand side to a stiff leg deadlift on the right hand side. This was my first week doing them, so my form wasn't perfect. But as you can see, with an RDL on the left hand side, the barbell will usually come to just below the knees. You know, it won't usually come any lower than that. More of a bend in the knee, which I wish I'd sort of emphasized on the RDLs. You don't have to do them with more of a bend in the knee, but typically people are trying to hit their glutes a bit more with RDLs, especially recently. So you might see a bit more of a bend in the knee, but that barbell will stop just below knee height. Stiff leg deadlift on the right hand side. Again, you want to make sure that your posture is really good for this, because if it's not, you are going to really hurt your back. Coming down much lower with the bar, so probably like mid shin to be honest, and trying to keep your legs stiffer, less of a bend in the knee, which is, like I said, I wish I'd emphasized more of a knee bend in the RDL on the left hand side. It's definitely not a perfect comparison, but you can tell the bar is coming lower, it's a bigger range of motion, and I'm not bending my knees anywhere near as much on the right hand side. So that's an RDL and a stiff leg deadlift side by side, and with a stiff leg deadlift you're trying to work your hamstrings a little bit more. So this was my first working set, and I wanted to film it side on so you can sort of see the form. As much as, you know, my glutes might look popping when I film it from the back, it's not the most helpful angle. So I'm showing you, you want to make sure, especially when you're doing your stiff leg deadlifts, because you've got that extra range of motion, really important to be bracing your core properly and keeping your posture nice and tight. So you can see I'm not like putting any excessive curves in my spine, and I'm trying to keep my legs as stiff as possible. I could definitely do a better job, and now on like week 5 of this program, I'm definitely doing a better job with my stiff leg deadlifts. But again, this is about showing you that it's not always perfect, and especially the first week on a program, it's not gonna be perfect. But yeah, I just wanted to show you the difference between an RDL and a stiff leg deadlift, and also show you a stiff leg deadlift. Generally, form wise, it's still the same as an RDL, so you know, you want to engage your lats when you are picking up the bar, walk it back a few steps from the rack, and then you are going to be focusing on, Dan's just come through the door, you're going to be focusing on pushing your hips right back, but you want to keep less of a bend in the knee. As opposed to with an RDL, you might have more of a bend in the knee. The clue is in the name, it's a stiff leg deadlift, but don't take that for your legs are going to be completely straight, because like anatomically, he's got the answer, that's just not going to happen. But yeah, my form has definitely improved on these over the weeks. Then I am moving into, so this was actually a substitution. The Smith machine was in use, so I wasn't able to use it sadly, so I had to do dumbbell reverse lunges. But this is my next movement, and I'm trying to do these super glute bias, which means really planting that back foot back and focusing on the knee angle. Now, if something that you find really confusing with glute biasing movements is the forward lean or pushing your hips back, especially with a lunging movement, I find that really confusing as a cue, because it's just very difficult with a lunging movement to think about pushing your hips back. Instead, think about trying to keep your knee as stable as possible and not pushing your knee forward in the movement. You want to focus on, like you would with a hip thrust, trying to keep a sort of 90-degree angle with your shin, as opposed to pushing your knee like right over your toes like you might with a quad biased lunge or squat or something like that. And that will also help you to focus on pushing back in the movement as opposed to pushing forwards. But yeah, I'm doing these with a dumbbell here, but I have been preferring to do these with a Smith machine, although I actually didn't mind these. And also I am using the pole in front of me just for a bit of stability, because this was the first time I'd ever even done this. I'd not actually done it before because I'd been using the Smith machine, which inherently will give you more stability in the movement. But yeah, I thought I would just show you this. Again, slow and controlled. You don't want to be rushing through the reps and making sure you are pushing really hard. You can see that my reps were slowing down towards the end there, and that is a sign that you are training hard enough. Moving on, we've got back extensions. I used to always refer to these as rounded back extensions, but I've since learned you don't actually have to keep your upper back rounded to hit your glutes. It's more of a cue to make sure that you don't hyperextend at the top and get more lower back. I do definitely still round my upper back slightly, but as you can see, I don't really excessively round it anymore, and I still feel these so much in my glutes. A really good cue for these is, again, it's really weird, but I shared it before and it helps people. So imagine someone's put like a piece of string in your bum hole, or like between your butt cheeks. It sounds weird, but it works. Like, imagine someone's literally got you on a string like a puppet master, and then you can imagine that they are trying to pull you up by your glutes. As opposed to just thinking about rocking back and forth in the movement, think about contracting your glutes to pull you up in the movement. And honestly, that will be a bigger game changer than slight bend in the knee, turning your feet outwards a little bit, which you can do if it helps, but that has been the biggest game changer in my form, and just feeling the movement and lifting with a lot more control in this movement. But yeah, I'm doing these with a plate. Obviously, you can do these with a dumbbell, you can do these body weight only. And in terms of the pad height, that is something that isn't perfect here. I would actually have it one lower, but this machine is so stiff at my gym, and every single time I ask someone to help me with it, I just feel so stupid, because within 2 seconds they've been able to do it, and it's just, I just feel like I don't even go to the gym because it's so stiff. All back extension machines, I don't know what, they just need a bit of DW40 on them because they're all incredibly stiff. But I would actually put it one lower just so you can fully flex your hips over the pad. But that would honestly be my only form tweak for these. I'm really, really, really happy with my form on these. Moving on, seated hamstring curl. So in terms of the setup, very similar to leg extensions. You want the knees to be in line with the bolts on the side of the machine. Every single like seated hamstring curl is different. Some of them don't even have like a pad over the top to keep you locked in, but I like that my gym, all their like seated hamstring work does, because otherwise I feel like it's very hard to stay controlled in the movement. And then in terms of the pad setting, mine is about like just below my calf. I would actually put it one higher, and I've started putting it one higher, and I feel like the movement is just a lot more comfortable. I would say my setup is definitely not perfect on this set, and I have since tweaked it so that the pad that I am obviously curling my hamstrings with is a little bit higher up. I just found that this was actually hurting like the back of my knee weirdly a little bit. But yeah, in terms of seat adjustment, like I said, making sure that your knees are in line with those sort of bolts on the side of the machine. And again, nice and slow and controlled. You can sit forward if you want on this, it doesn't matter. You can sit backwards, and I like doing seated and lying on different days in the week because they're both beneficial. They do work your hamstrings slightly differently. I believe seated hamstring curls are meant to be like marginally better for hamstring growth, but I like to do both, so I do both across my week. It's actually further along in the video, but I've just realized I forgot to put this in because I didn't film the clip, so I just completely forgot that I'd put it in my program. But on the end of my glutes and hamstrings day, I do also have cable abductions 2 times 10 to 15. So just to talk you through the setup, you want to set the cable up at the bottom of the tower like I do with the glute kickbacks in this video. You can skip to the end to see those. The form is obviously not the same, it is a bit different because it's a cable abduction. I just don't have the clip because I actually had to skip them this day because the gym was too busy. But yeah, you want to set the cable attachment up at the bottom, cable cuff around the bottom of your foot, no, cable cuff around your ankle, bottom of the cable, and then again you can use your hand to hold on to the like cable tower to give you a bit more stability. You're going to take a couple steps out so that you can fully cross your foot over on the way in without sort of slamming the weights down, and you are kicking straight out to the side. So you're going to stand side on to the cable machine, you're not going to be facing it. It's not a glute medius kickback, which is sort of diagonal. It's not a glute kickback, it's a pure abduction. So you are kicking your leg out to the side, and that is literally it. Go with a light weight. You don't want to be like trying to like really use momentum with this movement. You want to be solely using your glute min and glute medius. You don't want to be trying to like fling the weight around, and you will find with a cable abduction you will not be able to go as heavy as you can with a glute kickback or a glute medius kickback even. And you'll know I don't have glute medius kickbacks in my program at the moment. That's just because I've been doing them for so long. I'm bored. So for my abduction or like lateral / rotary work for my glutes, I've decided to go back to cable abductions, which I've not done in a long time, and I really enjoy doing them. Okay, moving on, we've got my second upper body day, which is incredibly short. It's a tiny bit of upper and cardio for the reason I mentioned before, and cardio is something I'm really trying to work on a little bit more, because I mentioned this at the start of the year, I want to be more overall fit, not just strong. And so I have actually done probably the more cardio this year than I have in the past 5 years of my lifting experience, which is honestly embarrassing to admit, but I do actually like doing cardio now, which is crazy. But I have a tiny bit of upper on this day as well. The one thing that I have first in this session is actually seated dumbbell shoulder press, but I don't have a clip of that, and I just want to get this video up, so forgive me, it is in videos before, and there's so many videos of people doing seated dumbbell shoulder press, so you can easily find one on the interwebs, but that does go first in this day. And then I've sort of changed around a little bit with the movements in my program, so this is a sort of updated version of it. Instead of just doing like a standard cable bicep curl, I've started doing these, which I actually got from Dan, and I really like doing these. So the cable is sort of behind you and the weights are sort of behind you, so you're really like stretching your bicep on the way down. These just feel so good, and like I said, I like having one bicep movement in a week where my palms are like this and the other one where my palms are like this, and this is one of my favorite bicep movements. So you want to set the cables up so that they are on the bottom one. You're going to step a few steps forward. By the way, you will not be able to lift a shit ton of weight on this your first time doing it. I think I've literally got 5 kilos on each and it feels so heavy, but you want to try and keep your elbows behind you as much as possible and just using your biceps to pull the weight up. These are so difficult but so good. I really like doing these. So then moving on, these are my sort of rear delt sort of pull down / pull around. So instead of just pulling straight out to the side, I'm actually pulling down at an angle because it targets your rear delts a little bit better. And I don't know if it's beneficial, but I like to really sort of go around the front and then pull back down. I just feel like I get a really good mind to muscle connection when I do it like this. And yeah, this is pretty much how I've been doing them. Some people will set the cable super high for this, but honestly, having it like in line with like the top of my head / one above is fine for me. And yeah, just pulling down at an angle to make sure I'm hitting my rear delts. I really like doing these, and I will do both sides. Obviously it's a single arm movement, so one side and then the other. In terms of attachment, I like putting the D handles on. Some people will do it with just the cable attachment itself, but I find that really uncomfortable on my hands, so I like doing the D handle. And again, some people will do it this way. I'm doing it this way. I just prefer it when my palms like this. I feel like I feel it a lot better. It's just the way I prefer to do it. It's just a personal preference. Moving on, we have got some tricep push downs. This was like a very quick set that we filmed. This was not actually a working set. It was just purely for filming because I wanted to get this video up. So I'm using the rope cable attachment. Sometimes I use a straight bar, but honestly, when you use a straight bar, because it's so fixed and not flexible, you can't actually fully extend your triceps at the bottom of the movement. So I'm actually much preferring using a rope, and my gym does have like a really long rope. I think it's a 1MR one, but we don't know where it's gone. I never actually got to use it for these, but I feel like that would be even better because you'd be able to extend even better. I know that Dan really likes using that. But yeah, bringing my arms up and then pushing down using my triceps. Again, really trying to stay as stable in the movement as possible, not shrugging the weight, trying not to use like my traps and other muscles to sort of assist me. My form is definitely not perfect here because, like I said, I just done other sets and I was sort of doing this just for filming. And in terms of the cable attachment, you want to have it a little bit above you so that you can pull up and then come right down. Obviously, if it's like eye level or like chest level, you're not going to be able to come up properly, so have it a little bit higher and then you can properly, and the key here, like I've said, is properly extending your elbow at the bottom to make sure that you're fully using your tricep. Moving on, core work, we have got some hanging leg raises. So you can obviously do these unassisted. I like doing these assisted because I find unassisted at the moment, I'm just going to be honest, my core and like grip strength isn't there yet to do these unassisted like hanging. My grip strength just gives up, and also I use way too much momentum and swinging when I'm not assisted, and that is one key thing that I do want to mention. You don't want to be like swinging your legs down and using that momentum to come back up. You want to make sure these are slow and controlled so that you are using your abs, you're using your core. Another thing to notice on these is I'm also keeping my knees bent a little bit, and that's just because it's sort of a regression. The straighter your legs are, the longer that lever is, the harder it's going to be, and my core isn't there yet. When I try to do it with completely straight legs, I swing, I use momentum, my form breaks down, so that's why my knees are a little bit bent. And then this is cardio. This is obviously from a different day, hence the different outfit. We've got that OG Rapids blue on, we love her. So cardio, I wanted to talk you through two different ways of doing cardio. So the first way is just steady state, low intensity cardio. I will do 30 minutes usually now. She's graduated from the 20-minute crew on the Stairmaster when I'm doing lifts. I would like to do 30 minutes. It's sort of the sweet spot of like challengingness for me, on like level 6 or 7. Or if I'm short on time, which is what I'm showing you in these clips here, I like to do something which I actually got from Dan, which is intervals on the stairs, which honestly it's awful. You won't catch me running on the stairs because I've got the coordination of a fucking like Bambi. Like, you will not catch me running on the stairs. I will face plant, I'll need another nose job, I'll need my teeth redoing. It's just not going to be pretty, there'll be blood everywhere. But I do like to alternate between speeds. So I will do 1 minute at a sort of 4 or a 5, and then I will do 1 minute at a sort of 12 to 15 depending on the day, and I just alternate that until I've hit 10 minutes for when I'm shorter on time but I still want to get a good cardio workout in. And those are pretty much all I do. So I will do those 10-minute intervals, or I will do 30 minutes of lifts. And in terms of like frequency for cardio, it's programmed in once a week, but I want to try and do it twice a week. Sometimes I've been able to hit twice a week, sometimes I've been able to hit once a week. I'm gonna be so real, sometimes I've been able to hit it 0 times a week, but I am trying. So you can see I'm doing the intervals on this day. That was what I chose to do because I was short on time, and I actually did this after legs. That's something I also want to mention in terms of cardio, because I use the stairs and they really do pump up those legs. I will only do cardio after weights. I don't do it before. It's not my main priority. Weights is my main priority, which is why I do cardio after. There is nothing wrong with doing cardio before. If you're training for a marathon, you're really trying to work on your cardio endurance, you can do cardio before. But if your main focus is weights, do the weights first, because otherwise you are going to be pooped for your weights, your strength won't be as good, you won't be able to progressively overload as much, and therefore you're not going to be getting the bang for your buck with your workouts. But yes, those are my two sort of cardio things that I do, and like I said, I try to do 2 times a week. I wouldn't do intervals 2 times a week, I'd only do that once. So maybe 1 intervals, 1 list, or maybe 2 list sessions a week. Moving on to my final session of the week. This is quads and glutes, and I'm just gonna say it now. This is one of my favorite training sessions ever. If not like, it's definitely my favorite session of my program at the moment. And I think it's because it's a shorter session. The longest session in this program is the glutes and hamstrings day, because The unilateral work at the start does take up quite a bit of time. Stiff leg deadlifts, I need big rest periods. On this day, you will notice some of the movements, and to be honest, on some of the other days as well, there's only 2 sets, and that's because I'm much better with my training intensity, and I've realized you don't need 3 sets of absolutely everything. You can get away with doing 2 sets of certain things as long as you're pushing hard enough. And I feel like it also just mentally makes me enjoy my sessions a lot more because they're a bit shorter, and I can really focus on giving those sets my all because I know I've only got 2 of them. And there's something about knowing I've only got 2 sets that makes me push a lot harder than I would if I had 3 or 4 on certain movements anyway. Obviously I've got 3 sets on hip thrusts, but yeah. If you've not tried doing like 2 sets of certain things in a day, I would definitely recommend, but this is my favorite part of the program. So the setup is the exact same as the B-stance hip thrust setup in terms of where you want the bench to be hitting, in terms of shin angle. Everything is the exact same, and in terms of form, the back thing I've mentioned, we've already gone over that, so I won't go over it again. The one thing I want to mention on this is if you do not feel your hip thrusts or your bridges in your glutes, but you're doing everything, you're locking out properly at the top, the shin angle is spot on, which by the way, I'm really happy with my form on this set. I've got nothing to critique. You've checked everything and you just can't work out what it is. I would really recommend slowing the movement down a bit, slowing the reps down. And when you are coming up in the movement, instead of thinking about sort of flinging the weight up, like coming back down and just like rocking back and forth with the weight, when you are at the bottom of a hip thrust or a bridge or whatever, think about, with the leg extensions, like I said, contracting your glutes and shortening them to lift the weight as opposed to just swinging up and down. Think about your glutes contracting to push that weight up, and it will be an absolute game changer. Also make sure that the pad is actually over your glutes, not like roll down onto your legs, which actually is one thing I would tweak about this. The pad is sat a little bit low, which I have actually tweaked in recent weeks, and it has actually mean I've had to drop the weight a little bit, but it feels a lot better now. So making sure the pad is actually over where your glutes are meant to be contracting to get the weight up, not lower down, which this is actually a little bit too low down. But those are some more sort of different tips for your hip thrust as opposed to the classic like 90-degree angle at the top, fully looking out, which we've already gone over. We don't need to repeat ourselves in this section. So moving on to dumbbell step ups. I love these. You can do these on a Smith machine, not in my gym, I'm too tall, or on a cable. I like doing them like this. So setup wise, you want to pick a box. The height of the box is about knee height for you. I would also recommend choosing something hard. The soft box is fine for me, but it does make it hard to balance, so something a little bit more solid, if you've got wooden boxes at your gym, might help you with balance a little bit more. Would also recommend setting it up so that you can hold on to something. Ever since I stopped trying to do these against a wall and just sort of sliding up and down the wall and having something to wrap my hand around, it's been an absolute game changer in being able to push my hips back properly because I've got a lot more stability in the movement. I want you to focus on pushing your hips back on the way down. That is the key to hitting your glutes on these. Instead of thinking about it as being an elevator, you want to think about it as an escalator. You're coming back at a diagonal, you're not just coming straight up and down. And I'm also going to show you my knee angle in a second so that you can see I'm sort of trying to keep a 90-degree angle. I'm really not trying to push my knee over my toes at all. I'm trying to keep this as hip hingey as possible, as hip dominant as possible, as opposed to being a bit more knee flexion and getting a bit more quad. Also, obviously making sure that you're not bouncing off your back foot, you are pressing off the foot that is on the box. So here is the knee angle, so you can see exactly what I mean. Can you see how my knee is really not coming super far forward? It's obviously moving a little bit, but it's not coming too far forward at all. You could also argue, to be honest, if I use something a little bit lower than this, that my knee would not come forward at all. but it is a little bit higher, but I like doing them on this. It's probably one of my favorite ways to do them. Moving on, something I only have 2 sets of in this workout, which is heel elevated goblet squats. Heel elevation to hit the quads a little bit more and help me push my knees right over my toes, which is the opposite of what I've just been trying to do, but we're trying to hit quads. We are not trying to hit glutes on these. So as you can see, I'm really trying to push my knees forwards, getting as much flexion at the knee as possible. And again, slow and controlled is key. Do not bounce or like bash your hamstrings off your calves with these. Slow and controlled. You want to be using your quads to push up, not the momentum from the bottom of the movement. Keeping the core nice and tight, keeping your posture good, and a typical sort of like goblet grab for the dumbbell, which is where you sort of grip it like this. Absolutely love this movement. Love it for quads. So good. Moving on, we have then got cable kickbacks. So set up for this, I like my cable attachment to be nearer the bottom. Some people put it in the middle. I like it nearer the bottom. It's just a personal preference. And then taking a couple steps back so that my foot can travel in front without the weight sort of clinking down, to keep the tension in my glutes. So that's the sort of setup. And then in terms of posture, you want to stay as upright as possible. You don't need to be like bent over parallel with the floor like I used to think you did. You don't have to be. Holding onto the cable for a bit of stability in the movement and just kicking straight back. These are just a straight glute kickback, trying to work the glute max. I'm not doing glute medius kickbacks. These are glute max kickbacks. And then I'm just showing you the other leg as well so that you can see. The only tweakment I would make here is, as you can see, I'm having to bend my leg quite a little bit to not scuff the floor with my foot. So standing on a plate with my other foot to raise me a little bit would mean that I would be able to keep my leg straight and kick back fully without bashing the floor. That would be the only tweakment I would make here. I'm really happy with my overall form, keeping my core tight, etc, etc. Moving on. Again, very boring because I've already taken you through leg extensions form, but I do leg extensions 2 times a week now, so I'm just bashing out leg extensions again. And obviously these are a little bit different in terms of my reps. These is a higher rep set, so these are 3 times 10 to 15, whereas my Monday session or like full lower session, it's 3 times 8 to 12, so it's a slightly higher rep range. Building up a little bit more of a pump. But yeah, this is my final movement in my glutes and quad session, and also my final movement in my full week of training. Like, paying attention to the intensity in this workout as well. I hope it's been able to show you guys that you need to be training hard. Your reps, if you are pushing hard enough, they're going to be slowing down. You're not going to be getting through rep A as easy as you were rep 1. So that is it for this full week of workouts video. I hope this video has been helpful, educational. Hopefully you've been able to learn something. And even if you don't, you know, go and copy this exact program, which, like I mentioned, it will be linked below, like fully written out for you guys. Hopefully maybe some form tweakments you can take from this video, or if you just decide to take little bits of each session, maybe you want to try out how I've sort of done my sets this time, doing like 2 heavier sets and 1 lighter set on a movement. Maybe you want to dabble in doing 2 sets only of certain movements to see how hard you can push yourself. Whichever way you want to use this video, use it at your own will. You don't have to completely take the program. But yeah, I hope this video has been helpful. If you've got any questions about any of the movements I've gone over, anything I've not been maybe clear enough about, or you want to know anything about any of the fits, because I did have some quite decent gym fits in this video, let me know and I will get back to you in the comments below. Let me know any other videos you want to see. Give the video a thumbs up if you enjoyed it, subscribe if you want to and you haven't already, and I will see you in the next video. Thank you for watching.